Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashnaya Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Hare Krishna, welcome everybody. So today we are going through Canto 4, Chapter 11, Text 19. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We'll go line by line. Please repeat after me. Sonanto nitakaraha kalo. Nadiradi kridavyayaha. Janam janena janayan. Marayan mrityunantakam. Sonanto nitakaraha kalo. Nadiradi kridavyayaha. Janam janena janayan. Marayan mrityunantakam. Sonanto nitakaraha kalo. Nariradi kridavyayaha. Janam janena janayan. Marayan mrityunantakam. Sonanto nitakaraha kalo. Sonanto nitakaraha kalo. Nadi kridavaya. Janjanena janam. Marayan mrityunantakam. Vaishnavis, please. Sonanto nitakaralo. Nadiri adi kridavaya. Janam janena janayam. Marayam mrityunantakam. Sonanto nitakaraha kalo. Nariridi kridavyayaha. Janam janena janayam. Maranam mrityunantakam. Sonanto nitakaraha kalo. Sa, he, anantaha, infinite. Anta karaha, annihilator. Kalaha, time. Anadi, without beginning. Adikrit, beginning of everything. Avyayaha, without decrease. Janam, living entities. Janena, by living entities. Janayan, causing to be born. Marayan, killing. Mrityuna, by death. Anantakam, killers. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. My dear Dhruva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is ever existing, but in the form of time, He is the killer of everything. He has no beginning, although He is the beginning of everything, nor is He ever exhausted, although everything is exhausted in due course of time. The living entities are created through the agency of the Father and killed through the agency of death, but He is perpetually free of birth and death. Purport by His Divine Grace. The supreme authority and inconceivable power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be minutely studied from this verse. He is always unlimited. That means that He has no creation or end. He is, however, death in the form of time, as described in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, I am death. I take away everything at the end of life. Eternal time is also without beginning, but it is the creator of all creatures. The example is given of touchstone, which creates many valuable stones and jewels, but does not decrease in power. Similarly, creation occurs many times. Everything is maintained, and after a time, everything is annihilated. But the original creator, the Supreme Lord, remains untouched and undiminished in power. The supreme creation is made by Brahma, but Brahma is created by the Supreme Godhead. Lord Shiva annihilates the whole creation, but at the end, he is also annihilated by Vishnu. Lord Vishnu remains. In the Vedic hymns, it is stated that in the beginning there is only Vishnu, and that he alone remains at the end. An example can help us to understand the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Lord. Beg your pardon. In the recent history of warfare, the Supreme Personality of Godhead created a Hitler, and before that, a Napoleon Bonaparte, and they each killed many living entities in war. But in the end, Bonaparte and Hitler were also killed. People are still very much interested in writing and reading books about Hitler and Bonaparte and how they killed so many people in war. Yet, year after year, many books are published for public reading regarding Hitler's killing thousands of Jews in confinement. But no one is researching who killed Hitler and who created such a gigantic killer of human beings. I believe Prabhupada is referring to time, the gigantic killer of human beings. The devotees of the Lord are not much interested in the study of the flickering history of the world. They are interested only in Him who is the original creator, maintainer, and annihilator. That is the purpose of the Krishna conscious movement. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Param Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prama Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tishe Namaha Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you all very much. So, we see now in this chapter that Dhruva has succumbed to anger. And in the Kshatriya caste, they are dominated by the mode of passion. And passion is often a gateway to anger. And as Bhava Vibhushana recently said in one of the classes in relation to this chapter, anger does have its place, and it should be, it has certain contexts, especially for Kshatriya, like you cannot fight in war without anger. However, it's very, very quickly contaminating, and it can be quickly taken too far. So if a personality is revered as Dhruva Maharaj has succumbed to anger and allowed it to consume him, what's there to say for us? I think anger has been something that has been a big part of my journey, and it's a very nasty entity. And I think from my reflection with anger comes from you thinking that you can control situations when you can't. Thinking that it's like you either want a person to be a certain way, so in your head you have this conception of this person should act like this devotee, this family member should act like this, but they're not acting like this. And then you think because of this that you're in the right to feel anger, or you have been offended in some manifest. And so that gives you a justification to feel this anger. But the issue with anger is, as we said, you aren't in control. And you never will be, because the Lord is Ishvara, Supreme Controller. And we will approach these situations, and if we continue down with anger, we will never let it go. We will never forgive these people, and we will continue to be resentful, because we can't control the situation. The situation won't change, and so we will continue to feel anger. And the more we feel anger, does anyone know the different paths of anger that lead towards deeper and darker ignorance? You recently sent me a text. There's a process, so it's like lust, anger, and so on and so forth. I can't recall these all right now. But the more we fester in this anger, the more our heart hardens, the less of a serving attitude we'll have, because we think, we are a controller and we should be in control of this situation. It's not happening. So we cannot think in a service attitude as long as we believe that everything should be, rectified according to our own whims or according to our own beliefs. And so we get harder and harder and harder. We get more anger, and the anger will manifest in different ways. Anger often manifests terribly in physical ailments. I recently read an article about how one little burst of anger can release a whole releases cortisol, and cortisol stays in the body for at least 5 hours. So one little burst of anger, and cortisol will be in your body for about 5 hours, and that it's not sustainable. That can lead to the liver often suffers the most when we're angry, because the liver has to process all these hormones and whatnot. And if the liver starts to break down, the liver is like a manager of the body. So if the liver starts to break down, then you're going to start seeing symptoms arising all across the body. And that's just like one example. Anger is incredibly bad for the heart. This is all just physiological. Anger obviously is very disturbing of the mind. I think, yes, Prabhupada said once, you can't think of Krishna when you're angry. It's, if you're angry, you're thinking about yourself, and you're thinking about how you've been hard done by. So you can't think of Krishna. So how are we meant to meditate properly if we're experiencing this anger? And we see this with Dhruva Maharaj. Initially, he was praying to Narayan for guidance in this fight, but he completely forgot of Krishna in the process of killing all these demons. Because if he did remember Krishna, he would have stopped. So he needed a superior authority, Swayam Bhuva Maharaj, to come and to these principles. In his manifestation of Kala. The time affects the material energy by a time, and if it's devoid of a spark within it, because we know the body goes through birth, death, old age, and disease, but everything. Time doesn't discriminate between something that has life in it and something that doesn't. Cement, the earth, it all will succumb to the changes of time. So we think of birth, death, old age, and disease with the body, but the entire material cosmos, the entire material creation also has a birth, death, old age, and disease, in a sense. You've got the 4 yugas, and they are Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. And we know that in Satya, the creation is at its fullest, and that's reflected in the entities that reside in the material sphere also being of better quality, physiologically and more spiritually advanced, and everybody understands the purpose of life, which is to pursue a realization of their relationship with God. But as the material construct, so it's created in Satya Yuga, it's in a perfected state, and then as the yugas continue, there's a gradual decline, just like a body, right? So it's a big material creation of a body, and it also declines, but it's just a way longer period. Just as Brahma has a very long drawn out life, like when he couldn't believe that Krishna was the Supreme Lord, so he thought he would play a trick by stealing all his dear friends and whatnot, and he left, but for a moment he was like, oh, okay, I shouldn't have done that to the boss, like maybe, he a little bit of like, oh. So he came back, but like, what's that for him? Like moments, like thousands, like a very, very long time. And when he came back, obviously Krishna being the Supreme Lord, he had outwitted Brahma, and then Brahma then immediately seeks forgiveness in that pastime. But we see with Brahma, his life is very long, and rightfully so, because he has the job in engineering and creating this material creation. So he has to be able to sustain along with it. But everything, Vishnu, Lord Shiva, annihilates the whole creation, but at the end he is also annihilated. So Krishna is the eternal principle. And so Prabhupada nicely references in the Bhagavad Gita, I am death, I take away everything at the end of life. So this is this is probably the most famous quote of the Bhagavad Gita. It was recently in a movie, Oppenheimer, in relation to the building of the atom bomb. But this is a gross misuse of that quote. This scientist, he created the atom bomb, and he said, "Now I am death, the destroyer of worlds." But this is Mayavad. You aren't God, and you are not you're not the creator. Even if for some time you have been given a role, just as Prabhupada described Hitler and Napoleon Bonaparte. They had these roles. Krishna created them. It's hard to hold that feeling because it's like that's really heavy. But he created them, and also he created every single one of us to have freedom. So, you might think, oh, well, why can't Krishna intervene and stop Hitler or Bonaparte or the person who created the atom bomb? And it's like, well, no, because this is the playground where we have a pseudo freedom. This is a playground where we think we can be controllers. We can be, pretend Krishnas. It just feels nasty even saying that, but and so he can't intervene because that goes against his own laws, and he's not that would be a difficult line to toe, because if he's stepping in now and then to like stop these people, then he's creating like openings in the integrity of the philosophy. It just doesn't maintain that structural integrity. Anyway, in the purport of Bhagavad Gita 11:32, Prabhupada says, even if Arjuna did not fight, every one of them would be destroyed, for that is the Lord's plan. Time is destruction, and all manifestations are to be vanquished by the desire of the Supreme. That is the law of nature. So, we can't eternally be these pseudo-controllers. In this current false ego, we get to experience this for one lifetime. So I have a current lifetime of thinking I'm Mali, I'm a male, and due to my psychological predispositions, I believe I am entitled to certain things. So, because like I was raised a certain way, like a stereotype, rich people, when they're raised very entitled or very luxuriously, so then they think later on in their life they're entitled to certain things because that was their conditioning. So we all have a level of that. No matter how humble your upbringing was, we all have a false ego. I am this, I am that. And Krishna, that's like a manifestation for a period of time. And Krishna entertains that because that's a desire we have. But it's impermanent, and it with time, we play out that desire and then it decays. So Prabhupada has also said many times, the living entity is not a dead stone. He has different varieties of desires. Karma. K-A-M-A. We have found ourselves in the material world due to desire. So a lot of different philosophies and walks of life believe that liberation is attained at the cessation of desire. But Prabhupada is clearly saying here that actually we always have desire because a symptom of a living entity is desire. You cannot strip a desire away from that living entity. And what's our purest desire? Our purest desire is to being a loving servant to our Creator, to our love. We're a spark, and God is the reservoir, the flame. We are a small cog, and God is the massive machine. Although it feels wrong to say machine, but yeah. And so that is like our Nitya Dharma. and that is like our eternal desire as well. But for some reason or another, and it goes so far back that it's not even good to elaborate too deeply as to why, but we had a desire to experience separateness from God, to be a separate cog from the machine. And Prabhupada assures us that, Krishna even tried to bargain with us, like, are you sure? Like, do you really want to do this? Like, I'm not sure if this is the best outcome for you. But obviously when a little child is coming to the father and is demanding something, the father might initially say, no, this is not good for you, not good for you. But the child stomps its foot and goes, no, I want this. I'm like, please. I know if I get this toy car, I'm going to be so happy. I know if I get this and that, I'm going to be so happy. And the father eventually concedes and goes, okay, here, take. So we were, we have freedom, and so we chose to experience separateness. And so that pure desire and that pure dharma to serve becomes clouded in a shroud of material layers. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. But the first, recently reading this in Canto 2 with when Brahma is describing all the different components of creation, the first thing that he has to put into the material universe is the false ego, because that's its main function. It's a realm of false ego. We are in a realm of false ego, and so we get covered by all these layers, and the most dominant one is the false ego. It's actually described. I've heard different equations in different writings, but it's described that each layer is about 15 times the diameter of the previous one. So you've got Earth, and that's a vast layer of material conditioning, and then 15 times that is water, and 15 times that is fire, and so on and so forth. So think about how vast the layer of false ego is, so, and we've got this vast layer of false ego, and think about having to try and overcome that upon your own whims. You've got these, I might come back to this later, but you've got these two approaches to spirituality, right? And one that's very popular because you feel like, again, because it feeds a layer of false ego, and it feeds a sense of that you are special. But the first approach is the ascendancy approach. So one sits, and by their own intellect, they will go down this path of inwards searching, and eventually, by their own efforts, without the mercy or grace of anything, they have some sort of level of realization. But the only thing that is transcendental or an eternal state is only thing that is eternal is what's my train of thought? The only thing that is eternal is transcendental knowledge. So if you have your own empirical experience driving you, you are not going to ultimately even attain a perfection, because you don't actually, it's like it's not you're not guided by scripture, you're not guided by someone who is there. The descendancy approach is so beautiful because we, for one, accept humility, which we could elaborate as to why that's one of the most important factors for spiritual life. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, so on. Because in that state of mind, that is when the Lord allows the knowledge to be descended onto us. And that, but the descendancy approach is surrender to Sri Guru. Sri Guru, Shakshat Ritvena Samasta Sastre Uktastata Bhavyata Eva Sadvi Kintu Prabhuya Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvinda. This is the most confidential servitor. And this is acknowledged in all the revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. And so the Sri Guru is in the most intimate plane with God. He's essentially already liberated, and he already has a deep, defined, vivid connection with God that is beyond our comprehension. And so the ascendancy approach, you're in the darkness of ignorance, and you don't have a rope, you don't have a torchlight guiding you. You're just kind of hoping for the best based upon the own whims of your mind. I mean no disrespect to people who are pursuing this path, but when I've spoken to them, it really just does come from a place of false ego, because you're just thinking, okay, no, I can do this. Yeah, sure. Like, wow, I had this one thought and it was really profound because I thought it was profound. Again, sorry, no disrespect, but we have to shrink ourselves down and be real. The Bhagavad Gita describes the real self, the Atma, is 1/10,000th the size of a piece of hair, one strand of hair. And we are in this gigantic cosmos of material creation that is dominated by false ego. And what, we think we can overcome this upon our own whims? No. We can only make any progress down a spiritual path by the mercy of Sri Guru. It's all the mercy of Sri Guru. And it always will be. So where was I? So, in this jurisdiction of time, and we have this original desire, and we find ourselves in this material world, and that desire will manifest itself according to one of the modes, according to which mode of material nature we associate with the most. So we have this desire to be separate from God, and then we take a birth in some kind of family, and often that family has an intertwined kind of karmic lesson, and that family will be, dominated maybe by ignorance, maybe by passion, maybe by goodness, and so that will express that desire to be separate from God in a certain way, such as some families might raise by hunting. And some families might be really into, like a drinking culture or something. And so you come in and you develop that desire to be separate from God in accordance with one of the modes of material nature. So if, Swayam Bhuvamanu is saying, the Lord is, nor is he ever exhaustible, although everything is exhausted in due course of time. So our body, in due course of time, will no longer be adequate for the soul to be in it. So what do we do with our time? Because we have time, and we've already described that we have desire, and desire causes action. And so we cannot be a dead stone. We have to take action. So what do we do with our time? And so I'd maybe just discuss a couple of different ways that people spend their time in the material plane. You have the karmis, and they identify the self as matter, and they believe in the science of studying matter with the senses to arrive at a truth. And so therefore they believe the body is the worshipable object because they don't believe in a superior nature. So therefore they spend time making elaborate plans to gratify the senses of the body. Because if you're just the body, then you believe that the bliss obtained from the body is the thing that we should be pursuing, because that is all there really is, right? If there's just the body, then what is the main pursuance? It's the bliss that comes with the body. That's the logic. That's the material logic. But these pursuits in time become embarrassed because, for one, as I said, we have this false ego for a lifetime, and our desires play out, but then they become embarrassed. You either have desires that require you to have a youthful body, so then that is taken away from us. You have desires in association of certain people, and that can be taken away from us. We have desires of certain acquisitions, and those acquisitions will degrade in time. And even if you're granted an entire lifetime of material happiness, still at the end you pass away, and that false ego of who you thought you were, what you thought you acquired, what you thought you had proprietorship over, it all just vanquishes with the body. The only thing you really do carry on to the next life is samskaras. So that's the one material acquisition that you can carry on to your next life, and that is, thinking, oh yes, I am this body, I am this mind, and due to lifetimes of developing psychological predispositions, you continue down these certain likes and dislikes. This is why some people come into this world and they just have an affinity towards certain things. It's like, I don't know why I like sports cars so much, but I do. Or I don't know why I like eating, expand and diversify. Because the thing about a material, and then it manifests in a different way, and then based upon if we lived in goodness, just dying. If you live in the state of mind sattvic, you're most likely to continue down a pious trajectory. Passion and ignorance, it's very dangerous. It's very likely you can attain animal bodies. We want to be careful with that. Wow, the time really went quickly. Okay, we've got 10 more minutes. So basically, I had a little bit more to say, but I'll just summarize. Then we have fruitive activity. So that's another trajectory you can go down. And so that's going, okay, I acknowledge an Ishvara, a controller. You maybe not have a direct relationship like that of Krishna, but you acknowledge a God. And I acknowledge that he is a fulfiller of desires. I had a name as well, a name of Krishna that described him being the fulfiller of desires. Does anyone know that? Sarvakama Pradayaka, fulfiller of desires. And so they acknowledge that, but due to either a poor wealth of knowledge or to heavy material conditioning, they choose to do things piously and good for the sake of improving their current material condition. Now the problem with that is you're an eternal being, you're a unit of Satchit Ananda that is trying to acquire bliss in an impermanent world. And so yes, God might grant you these things after pious activity, fruitive action, and you receive these fruits, and then you attain them and you enjoy them, but then the pious credits wash away, and again you find yourself in the same predicament that you were before. And you can do this for many lifetimes, this kind of business transaction with the Lord, but it's futile. And then one comes to the path of gyan, knowledge. So then one acknowledges the futility in seeking bliss in the impermanent world, and they no longer identify with material because they know it to all be temporary, and they might even acknowledge the fact that time, time in the context of the matter is constantly degrading everything, so we have to step out of time and space. So then these entities often go down a path of Atma realization, so they look for spirit within. But from what I've learned, the common misconception with the Gyan yogis and the impersonalists is they don't discern between Atma and Paramatma. So they think there's no Atma and Paramatma, it's just Paramatma. So they think that they are an all-pervasive consciousness once they break out of the identification or the illusion of the body and the mind. So think about this. You've got this one mathematical equation, and the first equation you do is incorrect. So even if all the processes that follow are relatively accurate, that first equation results in the final result being imperfect and a complete illusion, because it is impossible to be God. We don't become one with God. In the Bhagavad Gita 2.12, I've been meditating on this one a lot. Na tva evaham jatu nasham na tvam neme janadipaha na chevana bhavishyamaha sarve vayamata param. Never was there a time where I did not exist, Krishna is saying this, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So Krishna is very clearly saying here, never was there a time where I didn't have my individuality, nor you, nor all these kings. And in the future, there'll never be a time where we don't have our individuality. Of course, the impersonalists take this text and say, no, but Krishna's just referring to the bodies in this. But this is just, you can't take, this is mental speculation on the scripture. Prabhupada, this is the glories of Srila Prabhupada, he gave us exactly as it is, the unabridged truth. So we cannot lose our individuality as the impersonalists believe, and so then we get, if we achieve perfection, which is an Atma Rama state, in this Atma Rama state, we are satisfied in the self to a certain degree, and Krishna, again, fulfiller of desires, grants us a residence in the Brahmayoti. Now, here again, you don't lose your individuality. It was described by Toshan Krishna to me, which it stuck in my head, that if you have a white pencil and you have a big bucket of white paint and you drop that pencil into the paint, does the pencil lose its individuality? Although you can't see it, does it lose its individuality? No. It's just immersed in that effulgence of Vaikuntha. And because you've let go of the mind and the body, you're in this peaceful state. It's not necessarily spiritual bliss, it's more so the bliss of just not suffering. So going to the Brahmayoti, one, again, they attain that by pious credits and some kind of level of spiritual practice, but then again, that dries up. And even if it didn't dry up, what if, because it's such a static bliss, you can become very easily agitated there, because it doesn't go anywhere. It's not a dynamic practice. So you stay there and you're in this peaceful state, but you get bored and agitated, and it's like if you're on a canyon and you're in a hammock and you're just sunbaking, but even the slightest agitation, the slightest movement, and you could fall out and fall back down into the material whirlpool. So that's the sensitivity of those higher planes, the heavenly planets. The slightest bit of agitation and you become heavy again, you develop mind, body, etc., etc. So the Gyanis, they don't pervade or escape the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. And to conclude, sorry, I'll go till 9. We arrive at Bhakti. Now, Bhakti is acknowledging the Supreme Lord in his beautiful form, and the time is spent worshipping the Lord. Now, from me meditating on the different effects that time has on the different practices and the different ways we can spend our time, all other practices, they become embarrassed eventually by time, except for Bhakti Yoga. With Bhakti Yoga, in time, you just get more Bhakti. Like the fruit of Bhakti is more Bhakti. And in time, you just become more purified and more and less. Krishna takes you. You come under the shelter of Sri Guru and Krishna, and you suffer less. And yes, so the perfection of Bhakti is described as anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyyanavritam anukuyana krishna shilanam bhakti ruttama. It's devoid of this jnana yoga. It's devoid of this fruit of action or any mechanical process to realize the self. It is unbridled, continuous affection towards the Lord, purely for the reason of loving the Lord and for nothing else. And in this state, one can finally pierce through the Brahmayoti and attain the spiritual kingdom, which is more inconceivable than the impersonalist realization. I think from a materially logical perspective, the becoming formless makes the most sense. So material logic is like 1 + 1 = 2, kind of like, so I'm experiencing suffering, I have a form right now. So therefore, the truth must be formless, because then I'll stop suffering if I'm formless. That's like the equation of like the impersonal realization. But real inconceivability is the fact that no, actually, there's a perfected form. There's a form that doesn't let us down. There's relationships that don't embarrass us, don't hurt us. And we just have to put just like a grain of faith in that and watch the Lord reciprocate in a very personal way, and the Lord reciprocates by putting us in the association of devotees and giving us every opportunity to come to his lotus feet. And so then we come to Vaikuntha, we attain a perfected, realized, spiritualized form, which is something that's not cheap, and something that is something I got told at the very beginning of my bhakti journey was the one thing that you have that no one else will ever have is your relationship with God. Your relationship with God is completely unique. There's no two identical relationships with God. We do have these categorizations such as Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya, etc. But even in Sakya Ras, your relationship compared to another Saki or Saka will be completely different. So we get this beautiful relationship that never lets us down, that fulfills every desire we've ever had. And and now it's just the process of falling at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada and praying, what can I do? And praying to Nityananda, what can I do to let go of this nasty false ego and come back to my perfected state, my most fulfilling state, which is the service of the servant of the servant of the servant of the master. So sorry I've gone a bit, I'm at 9, so we'll conclude there. If there's any corrections, please say it now so everybody knows, so I haven't spread some misinformation or any statements or anything. Hare Krishna. So the Shiva, thank you for your question, and it's a really good question, and it's very difficult. And the Shiva tattva is renowned for being one of the most difficult tattvas to understand in this philosophy. And I have very little understanding of this, but I would say that Kailash, if you actually look at the depictions of the whole of creation, including like Vaikuntha and stuff, Kailash is actually within Vaikuntha. So there's an eternal Shiva, but then there's also a Shiva that manifests in this material world, and I'm assuming he accepts annihilation along with everything else as part of his. But like, you know, what's like annihilated, because Shiva's eternal, so he gets absorbed again into Mahavishnu, and then the creation would begin again. That would be from my limited understanding. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Any? No, it's okay.
So, one of my questions is about desires, right? So at the beginning you said, like, for some tradition, resistance. You attain liberation by getting rid of all your desires, right? Sometimes I found myself with a lot of desires about material work, and I was feeling guilty about it, right? But then you said that our nature as human beings is having desires. So now my question is, should I have like material desires related to this world, even if I know that they will not give me eternal bliss, they will not give me, or should I just have desire related to the Lord? So like developing my relationship with the Lord, spreading the word of the Lord.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you. So the beautiful thing about having a desire to attain love of God or desire to be with God is it naturally evaporates all other desires in the process. So you might have some now, and I wouldn't feel guilty because, again, let's just think about the many trillions of years that we've spent in the material plane. And now we're in this one lifetime where we know Krishna. And out of that one lifetime, it's been like 24 years. And out of that 24 years, I've been seriously pursuing Krishna maybe like 4 years, 3-4 years. And then, in that 4 years, I'm getting guilty because I still have material desires. So, it's okay. we're gonna be plagued with material desires for a fair amount of time. But the more you associate with that fire of Krishna consciousness, the more everything will just evaporate naturally, and it won't even be a guilt thing. You'll just literally not want to. Like, I follow the regulative principles, but it's not like, oh, you have to follow the regulative. It's like, I just don't want to do those things. Like, it's not a big strain. Like, I just love doing Krishna conscious stuff. Yeah, it's very organic. Yeah. 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 So just keep chanting Hare Krishna, and then eventually all you want to do is chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
My question was like, so as if Krishna is the creator of everything, so he has also been creating this separation from him, because he's been creating everything. This feeling of separation from him, also he been created with it.
Yeah.
So he could say that he wanted to create this separation from him so we could come to this physical form to have experience through his creation, and we could see and we could experience that, okay, he has been creating all of this, but still he is the one that we all go back to him. So it's sort of like he could say that?
Yes, so again, we have to discern between the energies. It's an oversimplification to say everything is God. Like a lot of neo-spiritualism is just everything is God, and that gives me the right to just like not worry and do whatever I want. But we have to actually use our God-given intellect to discern between the energies of God. And we have this inferior energy of God, and we have the superior. This table thing right now, it's devoid of spirit. It's just material energy, and therefore it doesn't have any freedom. It's not going to move unless something with spirit moves it. My body and my clothes are only moving because I am spirit and I am moving my body, and but we don't know that currently. We think we are the body. So we just have to associate more with spirit and undergo that purification process. And yeah, sorry, does that answer in any way? Okay. All right, we'll conclude there. Sorry for going over time. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.